Concerns over alleged secret meeting between Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike and APC presidential candidate Bola Tinubu in faraway France. Member of the House of Representatives Dachin Bago speaks on possible violation of due process in the repatriation and disbursement of Abacha loot and other stolen funds by the federal government. Welcome everyone to Politics Today. I'm Terry Ikumi. Now a look at the calendar shows that it's 193 days since the Academic Staff Union of Universities embarked on a strike. The University of Abuja branch of the union is challenging the federal government to mention what it has done to bring it to an end, declaring that the strike will be sustained. Meanwhile, members of the Joint Action Committee of Non-Academic Staff Union and Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, University of Lagos branch, today protested against the sudden suspension of its strike by their executives last week. They say a congress was supposed to be held before the suspension of the strike. Welcome once again. Now, news making the rounds suggests a secret meeting between the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, and the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Bola Tinubu, in Paris, France, fueling speculations that the duo from rival political camps might have entered into a plot to support the APC presidential agenda. However, a close source is denying any of such plots, despite confirming that Governor Wike is indeed in France for vacation, going further to challenge anyone to produce pictures of the duo together as evidence. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari presided over the Federal Executive Council meeting at the State House today. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo physically attended the meeting for the first time since a successful surgical operation and discharge on the 25th of July this year. He was welcomed by ministers and presidential aides at the council chambers. After the meeting, the Minister of Transportation spoke to State House correspondents and gave reasons why train services on the Abuja-Kaduna rail line are yet to resume.
It is better to save the life of one Nigerian. To save the life of one Nigerian than risk the lives of many Nigerians. There are two core matters at the heart of the resumption of the Abuja-Kaduna rail services. And these core issues are: one, families are traumatized over their loved ones that are still in captivity. Two, we need to have a surveillance and monitoring system on the rail track that would ensure that such incidents never happen again. We are working day and night. Look, we are looking at solutions that are technology-based. And you know, technology changes every day. At the same time, don't forget, for goodness sake, wouldn't it be insensitive of us to resume these services, even if security surveillance was in place, as long as some members, some citizens of this country spend days and nights weeping over their loved ones that are held in the bush.
The Minister of Transportation, Muazu Sambo, explaining to State House correspondents why services on the Abuja-Kaduna rail line are yet to kick off. Well, let's get more political stories. Here's Political Roundup.
As Nigerians prepare to go to the polls in 2023, the Arewa New Agenda, a civil society group, are pledging their commitment to the socio-economic development of Nigeria as a nation. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the convener of the forum, Senator Ahmed Mohala Yidi, says the agenda of the forum is to produce a northern compendium that clearly articulates the thinking, position and demands of the North within a united Nigeria. He adds that votes from the North cannot be discarded by anyone who truly wants to become president of the country in 2023. The spokesperson for the campaign of the candidate of the ruling All Progressives Congress, APC, Mr. Festus Keyamo, says the presidential candidate for the APC has earned the strides on which Nigeria enjoys a fledgling democracy. Speaking at the launch of the Progressives Forum in Abuja, Mr. Keyamo says no candidate has sacrificed more for Nigeria's democracy than Senator Bola Tinubu. He adds that the APC candidate is not only qualified based on his past governance antecedents, but as a champion of democracy.
Without Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu today, one man standing, we will not have a multi-party democracy. That's the truth. He has earned stripes, he has earned it. If you were wise enough in 2003, that was the turning point in Nigeria's democracy. PDP wiped out all the states in the south. Not everywhere. They wiped out everywhere. They wrote results. Wiped everybody out. As when you fought back and kept Lagos.
The Bauchi state government is moving to revive its moribund industries. To this effect, the state government has opened a bid for the commercialization and privatization of 6 public properties in the state. The Deputy Governor, who is also Chairman, Bureau of Public Privatization and Economic Reforms, says the move is part of efforts to improve the economy of the state and create jobs for teeming Bauchi populace.
It is better for government to lease out the hotel, make some money, and in the process be able to get about 50–60% occupancy.
A civil society group, the Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, wants the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency to conduct drug tests for politicians vying for political positions in the 2023 general election. Addressing journalists in Abuja, the coordinator of the group, Mr. Emmanuel Onwubiko, explains that the National Assembly can amend the NDLEA Act to compel all candidates to be subjected to drug tests before the election. He also wants the National Assembly to expedite action on the passage of a bill for an act to establish the National Electoral Offences Commission in the interest of the nation's democracy. Mr. Onwubiko says Nigeria needs to have a strong law to prosecute electoral offenders, including highly placed politicians who use their influence to buy votes during election. The House of Representatives ad hoc committee investigating suspicious and unclaimed funds in various accounts with commercial banks has instructed the Nigeria Export Processing Zones Authority, NEPZA, to refund the sum of 13.3 billion naira to the federal government. Speaking at the resumed hearing of the investigation at the National Assembly, the chairman of the committee, Mr. Unyime Idem, directed the agency to reconcile its accounts with its consultant within 1 week, as documents presented by the authority did not explain the whereabouts of the missing funds. Although the director of finance and accounts of the agency, Mr. Oyeshola Oyekunle, who represented the managing director of the agency, says they remitted 25% of their operating surplus as amended by the Ministry of Finance. The chairman of the House committee disagreed, saying 80% of the surplus is to be remitted as far as the law is concerned.
We are satisfied with this, the work of the committee. So it is left for you to let us know when this money can be transferred to federal government accounts.
The national chairman of the Labour Party, Barrister Julius Abure, has debunked reports that there is a misunderstanding between the presidential candidate of the party, Mr. Peter Obi, and some chieftain of the party over campaign funds. In a statement issued by the National Publicity Secretary, Comrade Abarambi Abayomi, the party notes that there is no rift as the party is focused on its efforts to win the 2023 general election.
All right, straight to the conversation now. The Nigerian government yesterday signed an agreement with the United States of America for the return of over $23 million stolen by the late former military head of state, General Sani Abacha. The agreement signing ceremony was held in the office of the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Abubakar Malami, who signed on behalf of the Nigerian government. while the U.S. ambassador to Nigeria, Mary Beth Leonard, signed on behalf of the U.S. government. But there seems to be some concern regarding whether the right procedures were followed and if the National Assembly was duly carried along. The conversation today begins with a member of the House of Representatives and the Deputy Chairman of the House Committee on Anti-Corruption, Honorable Dachung Bagos. Honorable, welcome to Politics Today.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, Nigeria.
So let's get reactions to the recovered loot. I'm sure you got the information yesterday as well. So the concern for many is the National Assembly concerned about the process leading to that agreement, or was Parliament carried along?
Yeah, this has been the tussle between the National Assembly and the Executive, even since the 8th Assembly, where the National Assembly have to put up a committee to look into issues, and with the tussle between the Appropriation Committee and the Executive. And this is my third year in the National Assembly. We have never discussed any of the recovered loots. We just sit down and we hear the Executive recovered loots and allotted the same expenses to various projects that they so deem to defy, that they so desire. But Section 12, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended clearly states that any agreement or treaty that is being signed on behalf of Nigeria by the Federation needs to be ratified by the National Assembly. So most of these agreements have not been brought to the National Assembly for us to ratify, to see if there are clauses in those agreements that is either that will cause some certain danger or harm to the Nigerians, to the next generation of Nigeria, and what those agreements are all about. Because to us, like the 8th Assembly that really argued some of the recovered loots, because then about $600 million from 2015 to 2019 that was recovered. The Executive channeled it to social intervention program prior to election, sharing for 5,000 naira and so on and so forth. And to us, we believe that as representative of the people, if such amounts of monies will be recovered, we need to look into such amounts of money. Okay, where is it necessary? What is the pressing need of Nigerians that we can channel such funds, and should come through appropriation as well, because if monies are coming in, should go to the Federation account. And if monies go into the Federation account, meaning that before it goes out from the Federation account, it needs to be approved by the National Assembly, not the Executive to just channel that this is what they want to do with the funds. We have pressing needs. Like now, ASU has been on strike. Government is trying to settle those issues. As a representative of the people, if I have to argue where those funds will be channeled to on the floor, I will say, why can't you channel part of these funds to ASU so that most of the youths that are at home could go back to school? But some of the issues and some of the areas that we feel that the Executive are channeling those funds are not the immediate needs of Nigerians. Because we believe that when we discuss these issues at the National Assembly, we appropriate those funds according to the needs of Nigerians. It's going to go a long way. Not just Executive will look at it and now allocate and allot it to what they feel it should be, but we as representatives, and the Constitution has given us even that right from Section 12.
I recall that the National Assembly has carried out some investigative hearings into these recovered loots. And I also recall that National Assembly did pass the Proceeds of Crime Bill, even though it doesn't expressly state there that National Assembly should be involved in this. Beyond these agreements, I know that the Attorney General has also said that international agreements cannot be bound by local laws.
Well, see, any law as it's been passed by the National Assembly, the immediate oversight of such laws, even if we are not part of the oversight whatsoever, the implementation of such laws should be done by the National Assembly. It doesn't mean that because the National Assembly has passed a law and the Executive just expressly use the law without an oversight by the National Assembly. And well, the 9th National Assembly, we have not even set up a committee to look into the Abacha loot like what happened in the 8th Assembly. But I believe that this is one of the issues that we should be able to look into when we come back from our recess on the 20th of September. Because we cannot allow issues like the students, you cannot allow issues like other economic issues that is really biting hard on Nigerians. And for us to be able to allocate, the executive will now allocate the funds to channels that it's not necessary. So definitely, is it
your opinion that the fund, based on the agreement, beyond the legality or otherwise, from the point of view of National Assembly of this agreement, is it your opinion or that of National Assembly that the decision to allocate these funds to infrastructure needs is flawed?
Absolutely, because the National Assembly wasn't carried along.
Simply because the National
Assembly is not carried along. If we look at, okay, for instance, they are allotted to the Third Niger Bridge. The National Assembly have been allocating funds to the Third Niger Bridge. What has happened to the appropriation of funds by the National Assembly to the Third Niger Bridge? That
second Niger Bridge.
Yeah, no, the second Niger Bridge. What has happened to the allocation of funds that the National Assembly have, that now you want to carry another funds to put into that? The other roads, what has happened to funds? Because these are infrastructural projects that has been in the budget all through seasons. So what has happened to those funds that the National Assembly has allocated funds to? So we believe that when we are being carried along, we look at these issues expressly, we should be able to allocate those funds. And again, especially those treaties that has been signed by the executive, the House need to ratify those treaties very well. If you will remember, the 9th National Assembly have to query some of those loan agreement with China, that we had serious issues from some of those clauses. So these are issues that we need to really sit down, scrutinize, look at those clauses one by one. As it is now, we just know that the agreement was signed.
But this is not the first loot that's been repatriated, and this is not the first time that these monies are being allocated just a second to infrastructure. This similar fund was recovered in 2020. That money was allocated to these 3 projects as well.
Those has been the issue. Some of us from the opposition, we have always talked about this, we have always queried this, and that's why in the 8th Assembly and even us from the opposition, we are querying such agreements as well, because so far the present administration has recovered over 1.2 billion of such funds, and we want to really
recovered.
Yes, they have recovered over 1.2 billion of dollars, not even naira, dollars of such funds. 2015 to 2019, about $620 billion, and between 2019 to date, with the addition of this 23 million. So we want to really look at how has it really impacted on the life of Nigerians from those recoveries.
So how, based on your last statement, how involved is the National Assembly in oversighting these funds? Since,
absolutely,
for example,
absolutely none. Absolutely none.
Who's to blame for that?
We have the treaty. We have the treaty committee in the House. The treaty committee, headed by Right Honorable Osai, supposed to be carried along in the signing of this agreement. Apart from the treaty committee, wheresoever those funds are being allocated to, various committees that have oversight in wheresoever these funds need to be carried along as well. Leadership of the National Assembly needs to be carried along. To my own knowledge, I have not seen the leadership of the National Assembly being involved in any of this, either signing or any of this execution. So these are the appropriation committee of the House needs to be carried along. So these are issues that we welcome the positive development of this repatriation. We like the idea, but execution, because transparency and accountability is very, very key. As a member of the Anti-Corruption Committee, we need to know how transparent most of these funds that have been recovered, because it now so happened that even in debt, Abacha is so generous to Nigeria. So how, with those generosity, how can we assure that this free money, in quote, do not go back to be looted again by people that don't have effective oversight. Because when monies that are not really looked into without accountability and transparency, then it will be looted back. So that's our fear. Because if we cannot get $1.2 billion over how many years, and the life of Nigerians is still the same.
But how is the National Assembly reconciling all these funds? Because the $1.2 billion, which you allege, is spread across the different anti-graft agencies and as well and the Ministry of Justice as well.
Yeah, well, I will speak for the House officially. I will speak for the House officially. But as a representative, as looking at from my own perspective, knowing that from the opposition party, from the opposition, we have not yet seen, neither carried along, we have not seen debates on the floor on these various funds. So, but I'm sure the House will have an official communication on what is happening and what has happened so far. Motions will come on the floor of the House, and for us to be able to look at these funds effectively. But then, I know that every single member of the House of Representatives is interested in knowing what and how each of these funds is being used, as being recovered from the Abacha.
You know, many would have expected that if the National Assembly felt this way regarding these funds, that by this time, at least, it's not clear whether the funds have arrived, of course not, but what step will the National Assembly take in putting a stop to something like this? Will the National Assembly issue a statement saying that the funds should not be touched until...
The way the National Assembly will usually work on issues like this is through motions and resolutions. And if we looked at these issues effectively, we'll come up with a motion and pass a resolution on by all the members for us to be able to look at these funds effectively. And I know that the leadership of the House is that leadership that have a listening ears to the yearning of Nigerians for us to be able to look at these funds effectively. So definitely, with the resolution of the House, with the agreement of the leadership, we should be able to look at these funds, because we have a lot of areas that Nigerians need to understand this issue, because we don't want at the die minute of any administration, these funds should be channeled to election, because it's election period. If you remember, in 2018, that was when the 5,000 Naira social intervention program kickstart, and it was through the Abacha's loot. So now, yes, that it has gone through infrastructural constructions and the rest. Let it not be that is now going to be funds paid, but projects not completed.
When you talk about the National Assembly being carried along in on the issue of the recovered loots, it's almost impossible that the recovery agencies would inform the entire parliament. But that's why you have committees. For example, you're the deputy chairman of the House Committee on Anti-Corruption. Yeah. So in your in relating with the anti-graft agencies, do you not get carried along in issues like this? What sort of questions do you ask to make you feel this left out?
Well, with what is happening now, it's a question that we will definitely ask, because as the Anti-Corruption Committee, in as much as we oversight the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, definitely we know what is going on there, issues that have risen from petitions and other suggestives, areas that things are not clearly spelled out. Definitely we will look into such. But again, like I said, most of the investigative activities of the National Assembly come through motion and resolution. So these are issues that we will table on the floor by the grace of God to see that the leadership look into these issues. But again, it's not about witch hunting, but it's about ensuring transparency and accountability in the entire Abacha loot.
Let me draw your attention to the Proceeds of Crime Bill, which was passed by the National Assembly. 2% of the monies recovered, according to that bill, should go to the anti-graft agencies. Now, how are you concerned about the utilization of those funds in relation to that 2%? Because it doesn't seem as though that's going to be implemented. And would you see this gaining ground eventually if this bill goes to the president?
Yeah, well, to me, it's a very big incentive to the anti-corruption agencies because, look, if we want to talk about anti-corruption, we want to talk about a fight against corruption, where an anti-corruption agency that goes on investigation every day and again has to be funded every single investigation. And for instance, ICPC, its own overhead at times, even before now, 100 million for investigation from January to December. Now it's a little bit up. Staff's welfare and salary is very key and important. If someone is fighting and is facing most of those temptations in investigation and so on and so forth, is not well fed, and you tell him to just... So those incentives will be able to boost the morale of the staff, and welfare of the staff should be able to be well packaged in the sense that when they are being tempted, they will look away because they know that they are being well taken care of. And when the anti-corruption agencies are well funded, they have operational vehicles, they can go anywhere at any time. I know ICPC then, as of even 2010, was using a 406 that started the operation, not just until now that they have new vehicles, but anti-corruption agencies, you look how poorly funded they are, that if they need to follow up any victim, they need to follow up any investigation, they don't have the equipments. Forensic, as of then, zero. A lot of issues. So the anti-corruption agencies need serious funding to be able to fight corruption. No even life insurance to some of the operatives. If an operative died today, that is just it. So when you are putting out your life on the line of duty, you should know that even if when you are not around, your family will well be taken care of. You'll be celebrated as a hero. But when nothing is there, your salary is nothing to write home about, just like the civil service salary. You will say, well, how will I die for a country that does not take care of me? So those are each areas that we have been able to look at. How can we get some of these incentives?
Just before we leave this particular topic, another issue of concern is the synergy, or possibly a particular agency that should be responsible for attending to these recoveries, that they should all be domiciled in one area, so you don't have different agencies and then the Ministry of Justice making recoveries that can be accounted for. House of National Assembly.
The recent bills, we have the Asset Recovery Act as well, which was part of the bills that was assented to. Yes, well, for asset recovery, for now, it has been domiciled with agencies that are responsible for the recovery for now as it is.
But this has been proceeds of crime.
Yeah, but looking forward, we are looking at how can we be able to centralize all this? How can we be able to? But these are issues that on daily basis, you look at how you can amend the law. You look at areas that you can be able to put things together. And again, with the low funding of agencies, we, as National Assembly, we are looking at the establishment of agencies day in, day out. When government could not and does not have funds at the same time to fund those agencies. Because yes, it's good to establish another agency to be able to recover and to put all the assets together. But how well will those agencies be funded? So that's why on the law, we allow the agencies responsible for the recovery to be able to hold on to those assets for now.
Let me quickly ask you this question before we go on our first break. The EFCC opposes the creation of Electoral Offences Commission. as against what INEC thinks is viable. Where do you stand on this? AFCC says that the law already provides the penalties for something like that. There are laws that already exist to take care of electoral offenses. No need for that.
You see, I support the Electoral Offences Act in the sense that, one, with the justice system that we have, once we have a certain body that immediately could be able to look into any electoral offense, it will go a long way. Most of the justice cases and the justice system as it is now takes many, many years. And now that technology has come into play in Nigerian election, one of the biggest challenge that we are going to have from 2023 election is vote buying, because elections will be transmitted from the polling unit. Once it's transmitted from the polling unit, that is all. You won't have the ballot snatching on the way from point A to point B or from point B to point C. So the highest rate, the major issue that we're going to face in 2023 election ongoing is vote buying. So, but if we don't have a law that immediately will prosecute those issues as it is, just like you have code of conduct case tribunal handle those issues immediately.
Okay.
So having such laws and such a tribunal immediately will be able to address such. But through the EFCC, well, the EFCC is handling that most of. Before you finish this, and again, they have a lot of cases on their hands. So we feel that having such will be able to address the issue of vote buying and other offenses before even the next cycle of election. And mind you, we have off-season elections in between.
Honorable Dachung Bagos, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And I believe that 2023 will be an interesting year, that Nigerians are waiting for the best to come out of it.
We already see that. Politics Today will be right back. When we return, we will speak with the ADC presidential candidate, Dumebi Kachikwu, on the 2023 general elections. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Politics Today. Let's turn our attention now to some more politics. My guest is the ADC presidential candidate, is Dumebi Kachikwu. Welcome to Politics Today.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
I think I should just begin by asking you a question relating to the Abacha loots. You've heard, and I'm sure you followed the previous recoveries. Are you satisfied with how these funds have been utilized so far?
Your previous guest made a very relevant point about the legitimacy of the appropriation by government. We saw that with the Ivory loot also. They recover and you hear, this is what we're doing with the money without going through National Assembly, and that's illegal. We all know that, But I think that the National Assembly is well able to fight their cause. It's in the public domain. Discussions are going on. I believe that the government will revert and do the right thing.
All right, let's go to other issues now. The Academic Staff Union of Universities says that it's not comfortable with how the government is handling the issue. In fact, the Uni Abuja chapter of the union says that it is challenging the government to come forth with and mention probably even one single way or effort that it has made that can be pointed at to say that this is how the government is intending to tackle this as issue. What's your take on that? And what do you expect that the government should have done by now to resolve the issue?
Well, you and I have discussed this before. The government is in a peculiar situation. They don't have the funds to cater to demands of ASU. So we are in a precarious situation right now. If they cater to ASU's demands, they might not be able to pay the wages of some civil servants or deal with security issues. So they've run the country aground and are thus not able to meet some of those demands. But we also do understand, like I've said to them, I've challenged ASU. I said, we are 8 months to the presidential elections. ASU, you've sacrificed for so long. Many years you sacrificed. For the sake of these kids, why don't you sacrifice one more time? Let's let the next government deal with this issue. We can't leave these kids to be at home. We all know that an idle mind is the devil's workshop. We see what's happening with our kids out there. So we should make that sacrifice, go back to school, and let's let the next government, hopefully we'll have a better government that can deal with these issues. But right now, this government has made it clear that ASU or education is not their priority.
You know, why you say ASU should sacrifice, there's a new contention, the no pay, no work controversy, where the government says it will not pay ASU for the months it's been on strike. And ASU says, well, if you don't pay us, that means the academic activities or the curriculum for that year is gone. So where do you stand on that? What do you think should happen in this case?
Well, the government is also in a difficult position. I understand their position. If you pay ASU for the time they didn't work, you then encourage people to go on strike and stay for months without working, knowing that government will pay. So this just serves as a deterrent to ensure that other critical sectors just don't go on strike. So I do understand the government's position, and I think that it's the right thing for them to do.
So it's your suggestion that as it stands now, ASU has no claim and should jettison all its complaints and make a sacrifice to return back to the classrooms?
There are two different things. Having a claim is one thing. Making a sacrifice is something totally different. What I'm saying is this. They've sacrificed over the years, over the decades. They've made sacrifices, right? And we know that this is a thankless job that they are doing. For them to be in a situation right now where our kids have stayed at home for this long, they are dealing with a government that is clueless, inept, and has no wherewithal to answer or respond to their demands. So what do? Kill the tertiary education of these kids? Mind you, the kids who are in this situation are the kids of the poor people who are in public schools. The kids of the rich who are in private schools are going to school every day. And like I said to you in our last interview, these lecturers who teach in public schools, most of them are earning salaries in private universities. So we must understand that. Who are those affected? The kids of the poor are those affected. So they are the ones suffering this. And for the sake of these kids, ASU, please, make this sacrifice. Go back to school and let the next government deal with this issue.
You're running for president.
Yes.
You're asking ASU to sacrifice and endure till another administration comes in. What if you become president? How would you solve the issue?
It's very simple. I said this. The first thing I will do, my first transaction, initiation, or correspondence with the next assembly will be a bill I call the Nigerian Patriot Act. It's a bill that simply says we're all in this together.
And just a second, Mr. Kachikwu. If you inherit this ASU strike, before that bill, how will you solve it, since you say ASU should hold on till the next administration?
First, I believe that ASU's demands are legitimate. I also believe that our economy can support this. I believe that my government will be a better manager of resources, will boost the economy. If the economy is boosted, we'll have more resources to cater to ASU's demands. But we must deal with the underlying cause of these problems. That's what I'm going to with the bill I call the Nigerian Patriot Act. It's a bill that says the kids or anyone who is in public office, civil servant, public office holder, or the director of a company that derives its operating license from government, your family, your kids, must all go to public schools. It also says your family, your kids, must use public hospitals. It says you must not have a borehole, a generator in your house. Tell you what, if the president, ministers, the people in the National Assembly, state governors, their kids, if they are all affected by strikes like this, if the directors in ministries, PAMSEC, their kids are at home for 8 months, if the kids of Dangote, Jimovia, the rich people in private sector, owner of channels, for example, people like you and I, people who have the wherewithal to send their kids to private schools or foreign schools, if they are affected by this law and if their kids go to public schools, ASU will never go on strike. You are aware that the best universities in the world are funded by private endowments from rich people. Those schools are not government schools, right? So we must have a concerted effort from everyone to ensure that these sectors work.
No, I don't know if that's an immediate solution to the ASU strike, which you will inherit if ASU decides to...
Not just immediate.
I said immediate, specifically immediate, because ASU needs...
Remember, I said to you, I said two things. I said the first thing I will do is to meet their demand because they are legitimate.
Absolutely.
This government can't fund it, right? Okay. But I said another government that's able to be a better manager of resources.
Will meet the demands right away.
Correct.
Very well, then. You're very passionate about the security situation. I mean, it's understandable why that's so, and you believe you have a solution. Now, at the NBA conference on Monday, you said that the police and the civil defense should join the military in fighting what you called Nigeria's war. Are you convinced that this is a manpower deficiency problem and not as against the provision of adequate provision of equipment to fight the war?
Absolutely, it's a multifaceted problem. Tell you what's going on with security real quick. We have a president whose body language for a long time sent a clear signal that I don't care so much. My kids and kin are coming through the borders. So they didn't take these people on headlong, right? At the same time, we had inflation, recession. We inherited a budget from President Jonathan, 100 billion every year for internal security operations. This president came in and for the last 7 years has utilized that same budget. He has not increased the budget, has not reduced the budget in a situation where we have inflation, right? You know that what 100 billion bought for you 7 years ago is not what it will buy for you right now. We know that price of petrol, diesel has gone up, right? The military are having to deal with paucity of funds. A lot of them have died. Some reported, some not reported, right? The terrorists, the criminals are recruiting people every day because it's a lucrative industry. Whereas our military is not recruiting even though they are losing people every day. Imagine this, we have multi-pronged war. Northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. The whole country is at war. We have large areas of Nigeria that we now call ungoverned spaces. So this military is severely challenged and they don't have enough people at this point. So we have the civil defense and the police who are trained in the art of bearing arms, but they are not trained the way soldiers are trained. So we need to give them strategic training for at least a month or 2 months for them to get to the point where they can react like the soldiers and join that effort. If we have 200,000 people join this war, multiple war fronts, we will chase these people out. But we must understand that this war has been sustained for over a decade now. So what this is short term. So medium term, we must start recruiting massively. It takes about 7 months to get a civilian to be a soldier, train him, right? Another 2 to 3 years in the art of warfare, bearing different arms and what have you. So we must start recruiting to get to the point of readiness. We must start now. But we are not doing this. First 4 months of this year, the military were not funded. Their operations, feeding, funded by credit, suppliers' credit. So it's difficult for these people. We see last year...
So, just a second. Where'd you get that information from? Because, I mean, with the military, the budget of the military has always been...
Terry.
Approved, so...
Terry, I'm in that space. So take what I say to you as fact, okay? First 4 months, they were not funded, right? Soldiers are fed on suppliers' credit, right? Now, imagine a situation where those who are at the war front, who expect that their country should be solidly behind them with whatever resources they need, this does not come to them. Imagine a situation where a general says, I make this request, right? And we send through the Minister of Defense to the President. We need 10,000 naira. It's reduced to 7,000 naira, right? And they send it on to the President. Do you think that the guy who's made that request did not know what he was doing when he said he needs 10,000 naira? Last year, we spent a lot of money buying armaments, serious equipment. But you must understand that equipment needs to be operated. It needs operational expenses. They spend money on capex, no money on OPEX. So the military is seriously challenged. And the last thing, which is the worst thing, Nigerians as a people fail to realize that they are at war. Go to countries at war. Watch, see what's happening in Ukraine or any country at war. The people, their attitude suggests that we are at war. We are solidly behind our military.
It's your opinion that the situation in Nigeria is at par with what's happening in Ukraine?
Terry, you asked this question because you and I are sitting in the studio in Abuja. But I think you should fly to the places, the war zones, and ask the same question. We have been at war for years. We just refuse to realize or accept it. We're at war. That's why we spend billions of dollars, because we're at war.
When you talk about training for the new recruits and how long it will take, some would question if we have the capacity for that. I mean, you've seen our training colleges and the state, which are in deplorable state. Where will this training come from?
Tell you what, it's a war situation. We adopt ad hoc measures to train these people. They are already capable to bear arms, right? So even if it be in their own institutions or the army institutions, it's for the army personnel to go and train them. They already know how to carry guns. So training them is a no-brainer. This can be done. The military is well able to do this. We need to get them to complement the war effort immediately. Yesterday, not today. This has got to be done immediately.
I think I would like to get your opinion on the fight against insecurity, which the government says would be abating soon. In fact, the government believes that before this administration ends, the situation would have abated. But following the recent comments by the security heads about the successes recorded, especially in recent time, is there anything that this administration is doing right that makes you, or that could be responsible for why they would think that or believe that by the end of this administration, the security situation would have abated?
Is there something they're doing right? Yes. Every day they go out there to fight this war. So they're doing something right. Every day they go out there to defend the territorial integrity of Nigeria. They're doing something right. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to do this, okay? The issues are the issues I have just mentioned here. They are operating under very difficult conditions. You know what? You can change the service chiefs, bring in British or American service chiefs. As long as they are operating under these conditions, you will find no change. Take the Abuja Kaduna train bombing, for example. You have a situation where they probably have a plan to do 8, 10, 12 sorties every day, patrolling that area. And because of paucity of funds, they have to reduce those patrols to 2 patrols a day. The terrorists know that these guys patrol at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. They know they have this window in which to operate. Have you ever wondered why we have 300, 500 people moving in convoys, terrorists moving within Nigeria? Nobody sees them, nobody responds to them. This problem is serious.
All right, Mr. Kachikwu, let's go to something else now. You had said that subsidy is a scam. You're not the first to have said something like that. Now the president has approved that subsidy be removed by June 2023. If you become president, you would be the one in charge by then. Is the action of the president satisfactory?
Why is he waiting until June 2023? Why can't he bite that bullet right now?
No, they say it's a gradual process. It's not something that can be removed right away.
We have been paying how much for diesel since beginning of this year? What's the gradual process? It's unfortunate that we are bleeding and they find it difficult to take the tough decisions that they need to take. It's a scam. We are making a lot of briefcase billionaires benefiting from that scam. You know, I believe that the president will soon change his mind. I don't think they can sustain this scam for too long.
Change his mind in what regard?
In terms of waiting till June next year. Let me explain this. A few days ago, we had the MBS say that inflation is about, what, 19.4% percent right now. That's official. Probably knowing Nigeria, it's probably double that. This means that if you earn 50,000 naira a month, right, it means that your salary is gone in about a week. We are in very difficult times in Nigeria. If we don't react very fast to the problems we are facing as a people, you see the poor people we ignore their realities every day. The 40, 50 million people who are in that bracket that we ignore their realities every day, who probably eat one meal in 2 days. Trust me, I said this to you last time. One day on your way to work, you meet these people who want a meal at all costs. And I hope it won't be your arm that they want to eat that day. You're laughing. We need to take this problem seriously. When it happens, what I just saw now on channels, I saw what's happening in South Africa where people are protesting. We have an economic problem all over the world. We have supply chain issues, we have a recession, twin recession and inflation issues all over the world. But we have a situation where we have a clueless government, absolutely inept, managing this situation, and they know not what to do anymore. So all they're doing is increase taxes here. Hey.
I think it's interesting you say that, because I had a conversation with the spokesperson of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, who said that in comparison to what's happening the world over, where the world's experiencing economic challenges, that the Buhari government hasn't done that badly. You
Seriously?
think otherwise?
Seriously? We have 40 to 50 million people in the poverty belt. We have that same number unemployed. We have a situation where diesel is at about 700 naira a liter. We have a situation where airlines are leaving Nigeria because they can no longer repatriate their funds. We have the naira crashing at an astronomical level. We have ASU on strike for 8 months and they are unable to pay or meet ASU's demands. We have Nigeria importing terrorism, exporting Yahoo. We have, as one of our products in Nigeria now, is the trade in human parts. We have kidnapping at an all-time high in Nigeria. We have corruption gone through the roof. And someone says to you that this government, the APC government, has not done badly. It's expected. Because, like I said, there are people who are no longer in touch with reality.
Oh, just a quick one before we go. Let me take you back to what you said, or how you reacted at the NBA conference when you referred to the APC, PDP, and Labour Party candidates as great-grandfather, grandfather, and father. It would seem that you're trying to leverage on your young age, so to speak. But beyond being a young person, what do you bring to the table that the other candidates cannot?
But Terry, shouldn't you ask me if that's what I meant? I mean, I was on a podium with Asiwaju who was represented, who by his age could be my great-grandfather. So I felt I was humbled. Kachikwu could be my grandfather. At the same time, I was humbled. Peter Obi could be my father.
What's the age difference between you and Peter Obi?
No. I was actually humbled to be on the same podium with them. That's one. I was also trying to say to the lawyers who were there, I was saying to them, 2 years ago, the NBA led the way by saying to Nigerians, we chose someone who was not a son, who was young, who was dynamic, to take us to the next level. They dared to be bold, to go in a completely different direction. I was in Lagos and I was proud. I was proud of the NBA to see what Olu Akpata did in 2 years. Magnificent. What I was trying to say to them is this: don't you be afraid that the youths can do something good, that they have what it takes. What will I do different? Tell you what, right?
As quickly as you can.
We're in a world today where foreign affairs is even defined by a virtual environment. We're in a world where these people cannot even begin to understand what is happening at an international level, because we're talking of things that are determined by technology and what have you. And they are being forced to react to these things. No matter how you prep them, they cannot give what they don't have.
Mr. Kachikwu, that's a very fine place to leave it. I'd like to thank you very much for finding time to come.
Thanks, Terry. I love talking to you all the time.
Thank you. Well, that's Politics Today. Thanks for your time. I'm Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.